The reasons why, in particularly 20th century book collecting, one title is hugely popular and valuable, and another title, which may be equally well received and written, is far less so, are quite complicated. There are many factors at play. But if there's one set of books, one author, for whom all the necessary factors for popularity exist, then it would be Ian Fleming and his James Bond books. To start with the basics, there are a discrete collectible number of them. There are 14 titles, a couple of variants within those, signed limited edition, for example, and variant bindings that people seek and hunt out. But basically you have a shelf of books. You can start with a fairly inexpensive one, which is another important factor, and work your way right the way back to some of the most valuable post-war books that exist. One of the things that this produces, especially given that most of the books are actually not particularly uncommon just to find an example of, is that with the Bond books, more than I think any other book, little variations of condition make huge variations in value. And just as an example, I want to take this book. As you can see, this copy is quite exceptional. The white on the spine is still white, it hasn't tanned to a sort of brown colour, and the red lettering, which is tremendously fugitive, is still present. And to give you other examples, this copy, you can see the tanning has happened a bit, and fading has happened a little, and this copy has gone much more so. Neither of these copies are actually particularly bad copies. They have their jackets, their first impressions, and they have value. But this one, being that much better, is worth multiples of times, 5-6 times what this one's worth, for example. And this is true right the way through the series. Now, given that there are only 14 books to collect, what you find is that people start looking for secondary material to collect as well. I suppose they finish what they were doing and move on. So there's a huge a group of books that surround the Bond books, continuations of the stories by people like Garner and recently, and Kingsley Amis, of course. And also things like this, which is the memorial address given by William Plumer at the service for Fleming. This being Bond, of course, there are 2 issues of it. There's the hardback one and the paperback one. And it's just kind of interesting how those things develop. One of the strangest ones I've seen, and we have, is Alan Moyle's book. It's called Nature Cure Explained, and it's a kind of pre-hippie, mid-century naturalists, self-help group book. The connection with Bond isn't immediately obvious, of course, except to those who have studied Thunderball closely, because when he's in Shrublands, right at the beginning of the book, he picks up a book which is the Bible of the cure home he's in, and it's this book. It's extremely uncommon, but of course it is unsold. Now, talking about Thunderball, this particular copy bears the following description, which is to Margot from Ian Fleming. It's in the author's hand, and it allows me to speak about the popularity and value of Fleming's inscribed books. It used to be thought that inscribed copies of the Bond books were genuinely rare, but more have come out in recent years, except there's been far greater demand, and they are very valuable books now. Famous copies include copies inscribed to Raymond Chandler, a copy of a book, Live and Let Die, I think, inscribed to Winston Churchill, and these have made many scores of thousands of pounds. But one can procure signed copies of the middle and late books for some low thousands of pounds, and they do make a kind of tremendous jewel in one Bond collection.